Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. The northeasterly wind howled through the skeletal trees of Queens, carrying the first bitter snowflakes of the season. It was December of 2000, and New York City was draping itself in a thin, white blanket. Harry Moore, 38, leaned against his old Jeep, his left leg braced by a crutch, throbbing with each beat of his heart. A training injury, a stupid fall while inspecting a logistics warehouse, had sent him home 3 months ahead of his scheduled military deployment. A minor shock, the doctor had called it, but enough to fracture his patella. He had decided to make it a surprise. Rachel and Katie would be floored. The image of his 80-year-old daughter's radiant face, of Rachel's beaming smile when she saw him, had been the fuel that got him through the agonizingly long flight from Germany. He'd called from the airport, his voice steady and calm. "I'm still on base, honey. A long way from coming home. Make sure you two stay warm." The taxi dropped him a block from his house. Harry paid the driver, grabbed his single duffel bag, and crutched his way through the light snow. The living room light was on, casting a warm, golden glow against the white ground. The curtains were drawn, but a small gap was enough for him to see a figure moving inside. A man's silhouette, tall, broad. A familiar gait, Victor Alvarez, his neighbor. Harry's heart hammered against his ribs. Just friends getting together, he told himself. It's snowing. Victor's probably just over to see Katie. He tried to rationalize it, but his steps slowed. Laughter drifted from inside. Rachel's laughter. But it wasn't the laugh she saved for him, not the soft chuckle at one of his dumb jokes, or the giggle when they were close. This was a wild, thrilling sound, brimming with an intimacy he hadn't heard in months. His throat tightened. He opened the front door quietly. His military-issue key still fit the lock. No one heard the sound over the peals of laughter and the low, smooth jazz spinning from the record player. Harry stepped into the hallway, leaving his dusty boots by the door. The familiar scent of Rachel's perfume mingled with the smell of red wine and something else, a rich masculine cologne. He moved toward the bedroom. The door was ajar. Warm light spilled out. And there, on the bed he and Rachel had picked out together at a Brooklyn furniture store 5 years ago, were 2 entangled bodies. Rachel, her lustrous brown hair splayed across the pillow, her face flushed. Victor, his chest bare, his arm still wrapped tightly around her waist. They froze. The laughter died. Rachel's deep blue eyes flew open, wide with sheer terror. Victor turned his head, his expression a flash of confusion that quickly hardened into a look of defiance. The air in the room grew thick, suffocating, heavy as lead. Harry didn't scream. He just stood there, leaning on his crutch, his dark brown eyes sweeping from his wife's ashen face to the smug arrogance now settling on his neighbors. The world seemed to fall silent, except for the frantic drumming in his chest and the hiss of the wind outside. He could hear his own ragged breathing. Then, without a word, Harry turned his back. He walked, crutch and all, leaving the suffocating room, leaving the desperate whisper of "Harry, I'm so." That had just escaped Rachel's lips. He walked through the living room, where 2 half-full glasses of red wine sat on the coffee table. He walked down the hall and through the wide-open front door. The bitter December air hit him like a slap. He hadn't put on a coat. He walked straight to the Jeep, pulled the door open, and collapsed into the driver's seat. The door slammed shut, sealing him in darkness and bone-chilling cold. Outside, the snow kept falling, burying the street, burying the house, burying the horrific truth that had just been laid bare. Somewhere on the second floor, Katie was still sound asleep, blissfully unaware. Harry squeezed his eyes shut and rested his forehead against the steering wheel. A single, hot, and very rare tear traced a path down his cheek. 6 months earlier. The brilliant June sun bathed the small backyard in gold. Harry watched Rachel laugh, a radiant, joyful sound as he wrapped his arms around her from behind and kissed the top of her head. Katie was chasing butterflies on the lawn. "You're amazing, Harry." Rachel turned, her eyes sparkling as he presented her with the check. The new kitchen. I can't believe it. He'd pulled countless extra shifts, working harder than ever in his role as a logistics officer to save for this gift. She'd been dreaming of it for 2 years, the oak cabinets, granite countertops, the gleaming stainless steel appliances. You deserve it, Harry whispered into her hair, inhaling her familiar lavender scent. Everything was perfect, or so he'd thought. Victor Alvarez, their next-door neighbor, was the first to offer congratulations. "Congrats, Harry! New kitchen, huh? Fantastic!" Victor clapped him hard on the back, his bright smile showing a row of perfect white teeth. He was a former athlete, still powerfully built in his 40s, now a real estate agent. His handshake was firm, his warm brown eyes always making you feel like the center of attention. "Need any help? I know some great contractors, quality work for a fair price." And so, Victor became the unofficial project supervisor. Harry was often away for work or short field exercises. Every time he called home, Rachel would gush about the progress, about how helpful Victor had been, assisting her with paint colors, overseeing the workers, even bringing over lunch when she was busy. "He's truly a wonderful neighbor, Harry." One evening after Katie was asleep, Rachel made a suggestion out of the blue. "I think we should try marriage counseling, Harry. Just one session, just in case." Harry was surprised. "Are you okay? Is something wrong?" Rachel laughed, waving a dismissive hand. "Nothing serious. I just thought, maybe it could help us communicate better, since you're away so often." They went once. Rachel did most of the talking about her loneliness, the pressures of being a temporary single mother, but always concluded with, "But we're really fine, aren't we, doctor? I just want to make things even more perfect." The counselor nodded. Harry felt relieved and a little foolish. They never went to a second session. Rachel said they didn't have any real problems. Willow Stein, Rachel's best friend, started dropping little hints. Once, over coffee at their usual spot in Greenwich Village, Willow frowned. "You've been flaky lately, Rach. You've bailed on our last few shopping dates." Rachel hesitated for a fraction of a second, then smiled brightly. "Oh, I'm so sorry. Last week Katie had a dentist appointment, and the other day I had to make a surprise trip to see my mom. My head's been a sieve lately, Willow." Her tone was light, convincing. Willow nodded, but her perceptive eyes lingered on Rachel's face a moment too long. The first signs crept in, as small as hairline cracks in a wall. Rachel started wearing more provocative outfits for girls' nights out or class reunions. Her running errands calls came later and later. And Harry, while checking their joint account to pay the kitchen renovation bill, saw a sizable cash withdrawal he didn't recognize. He asked about it. Rachel waved her hand. "Oh, that was for my mom's birthday gift and a few other little things. I forgot to tell you, are you mad?" Her eyes were wide, innocent. Harry pulled her into a hug. "Of course not. It's your money, too." But a tiny seed of doubt had been planted, lying dormant in the dark. Harry sat in the freezing Jeep, the memories of every missed sign flooding back like a tidal wave. He remembered the night clearly, about 3 months before he was due to deploy. Rachel was wearing a form-fitting black dress, her makeup perfect. "I'm going to a wine tasting with Willow and some old friends," she said, giving him a quick peck on the cheek. "Might be a little late." "Okay, have fun, honey," Harry had replied, his head buried in work reports. When she returned near midnight, smelling faintly of alcohol, her face flushed and glowing, Harry asked, "So, which vineyard had the best wine?" Rachel, in the middle of taking off her heels, paused. A flicker of panic crossed her eyes. "Oh, he said, didn't he? Oh, from the Napa region, Napa Valley. The red was amazing." Her voice was a little too high, a little too fast. Harry had nodded, but a question flickered in his mind. "Willow hates red wine." Then there was the hotel bill, a luxury chain in Midtown. It showed up on their joint credit card statement. Harry pointed it out. Rachel sighed, a look of weary frustration on her face. "Oh, Harry, I was planning a surprise for you, a relaxing spa day for the two of us, but I got a horrible migraine that day and had to cancel. They still charged the booking fee. I forgot to mention it. It's my fault." She hugged him, nuzzling her head into his shoulder. "I'll make it up to you. I promise." Harry held her tight, scolding himself for his suspicion. It's okay, honey, as long as you're feeling better. It was Katie's innocent words that had twisted his heart the most. One night, as he was reading her a bedtime story, Katie looked up with her big, round eyes. Last night, Uncle Victor tucked me in when Mommy was tired. Harry went still. What did you say? Katie nodded. Mommy said she was tired and couldn't get up. Uncle Victor came over to play and he tucked me in and sang me a lullaby. He sings really well. Blood rushed to Harry's face. He walked down to the kitchen, where Rachel was washing dishes. Victor was here last night while I was away, and he tucked Katie into bed? His voice was ice. Rachel turned, her face pale, but she quickly composed herself. Oh my God, Harry, don't misunderstand. I had a terrible migraine. I could barely move. Victor came over to borrow a drill and saw what a state I was in. He was just being nice and helped get Katie to bed because I couldn't. He was here for an hour, then he left. I didn't want to bother you while you were on base. Her eyes welled with tears, her voice trembling. Harry looked at her, his gut churning with conflict. Finally, he hugged her. I'm sorry. I worry. A few days later, in a small bar near the precinct, Harry met Neil Carson, his best friend from high school, now a detective. Neil listened in silence as Harry recounted the story of the hotel bill, of Victor, of Katie. Neil's sharp, cold eyes seemed to see right through him. He took a sip of his beer, his voice low and deliberate. Harry, my friend, I've been in this business long enough to know one thing. If it smells rotten, chances are something is. Neil looked Harry straight in the eye. You should keep your eyes open on this one. Harry let out a harsh laugh, clapping Neil on the shoulder. Come on, Neil. Rachel, she would never do that to me. Not in a million years. He downed his beer, trying to extinguish the little voice in his head that was now repeating Neil's words. Chances are, something is rotten. Now in the cutting cold of his Jeep, Harry knew. Neil's instinct, and his own, had been right. The cost of that truth was a devastation so complete it felt physical. He sat there all night, motionless, the ache in his leg a dull throb that was nothing compared to the agony tearing through his chest. At some point, the bedroom light went out. The house was swallowed by darkness and white snow, a cold, silent iceberg in the winter night. Dawn broke, gray and frigid. Harry saw Rachel's silhouette pass by the kitchen window. A moment later, the front door opened. Rachel stepped out, a thin robe thrown hastily over her pajamas, her feet in slippers. She saw him in the Jeep, her face a mask of genuine concern. But beneath it, Harry saw the flicker of panic. Harry, oh my God, have you been out here all night? What's wrong with you? Come inside, you'll freeze to death. Her voice trembled, her hands twisting together. Harry opened the car door and crutched his way out. His face was a frozen, expressionless mask. I'm fine. Just needed some air. Rachel rushed toward him, reaching out to help. Harry sidestepped her, gently but firmly. Where's Katie? She's sleeping. Harry, please. Tears welled in her eyes. You look terrible. Your leg. Come inside. I'll make coffee. Harry looked at her, his gaze feeling like it could pierce steel. Okay. He nodded and walked into the house. The familiar smell of coffee, of toast, but underneath it all, the phantom scent of Victor's cologne and the invisible stench of guilt. Katie came running down the stairs, her hair a tangled mess. Daddy, you're home! She threw her arms around Harry's good leg. Harry bent down, forcing a smile that made his own face ache. Daddy's home, princess. Did you miss me? I missed you so much, but why did you sleep in the car last night? Wasn't it cold? Her innocent, wide eyes stared up at him. Harry stroked her hair. Daddy, got home late, didn't want to wake you and Mommy, and I was a little tired. The lie burned in his throat. Rachel bustled in with the coffee, her smile too bright on a face marked by a sleepless night. Here, hot coffee, honey. I was so worried. Is your leg hurting? Should we see a doctor? She touched his arm lightly, a touch that felt like an electric shock. Her concern now sounded like a poorly rehearsed play. That afternoon, Victor came over. The same relaxed posture, the same brilliant smile. Hey, Harry, heard you were back. You okay? Leg must be killing you. He clapped Harry on the shoulder as if nothing had happened the night before. Anything you need? Just say the word. That's what neighbors are for. Harry looked directly into Victor's eyes, a faint, unreadable smile playing on his lips. Thanks, Victor. I'm fine. His voice was placid, without a ripple of emotion, but it was that very placidity, Victor's completely unabashed friendliness, that told Harry everything. They've done this before, probably many times, and Victor thinks he can face me without an ounce of fear. That confidence was more damning than any confession. When Victor went home, Harry stood up, feigning the need to hobble around the living room for circulation. His eyes scanned the cozy room that had once been filled with his family's laughter. He stopped at the decorative wooden air vent, low on the wall near the armchair Victor often sat in. A cold, calculating thought surfaced. The military discipline took over, overriding the emotional agony. He went upstairs to his small office and rummaged through an old toolbox, a tiny battery-operated voice recorder, still in working order. He went down to the kitchen, where Rachel was washing dishes. I'm running to the corner store for a few things. You need anything? His voice was light. Rachel turned, smiling. No, I'm all set. Be careful with that leg. Harry nodded and walked out. He didn't go to the corner store. He went straight to the electronics shop a few blocks away. 15 minutes later, he returned with a small package in his pocket. While Rachel was busy cleaning the bathroom, Harry knelt by the air vent. His hands, which had once managed complex logistical systems, moved with swift precision. He attached the small recorder to a hidden corner inside the vent's housing, the microphone aimed toward the center of the room. The batteries were full. The record button was pressed. A small spider was spinning a web nearby. Harry stood up and dusted off his hands. His heart was ice, his mind a machine. The silent war had begun. The cheap motel room near LaGuardia Airport became Harry's makeshift command post. Since planting the recorder, he'd had to take a sudden trip to the base for a few days, a flimsy excuse that Rachel had accepted with what seemed like relief. Now, with headphones clamped to his ears, Harry sat in front of his old laptop, listening to the first recordings from the air vent. There was white noise, the sound of the TV, Katie talking to herself. And then, their voices. Victor's voice, deep and confident. He's not going to do anything, Rachel. He's some Book soldier. He'll swallow his pride and keep quiet, all for his cheap sense of honor. A dismissive chuckle. Rachel's voice, higher, tinged with irritation. I don't know, Victor. The look in his eyes that day, it was like ice. It scared me. A sigh. But it's true. He's just boring. Life is the same script over and over. Go to work, come home, play with Katie, sleep. There's no adventure. I feel trapped. Victor. Trapped? You're with me now, the man who can give you everything. We'll get out of this Queens shithole. Florida, California, wherever you want, but first, his voice lowered. We need to secure the finances. That military pension of his is pretty significant. What do you think he'd do if he found out? Garnish it? Cut you off completely? Rachel was quiet for a moment. He'd probably file for divorce immediately, and he'd win custody of Katie. He's always been the perfect father in the court's eyes. As for the money, he'd fight to keep every penny. Victor, then we have to act first. Find a way to make him look like the bad guy. Or create an excuse for him to back off willingly. A minor scandal? Or prove he's unstable. After the broken leg and this, maybe he's depressed. In therapy, there are ways, Rachel. I know people. Harry shot to his feet, kicking the metal bed frame so hard his leg screamed in protest. A volcanic rage surged through him, a desire to smash everything in sight. Book soldier. Trapped? His military pension? The betrayal was one thing, but hearing his own wife coldly discussing how to strip him of his future and his daughter, how to paint him as the villain. It was 1,000 times more cruel. A wave of humiliation and shame washed over him. He had trusted, loved, and dedicated his life, only to be seen as a fool, an obstacle to be removed. He grabbed his phone and dialed a number. Neil, I need to see you. Now. The usual place. The bar was quiet in the late afternoon. Neil was already there, a whiskey in his hand. His face was grim as he took in Harry's pale complexion and bloodshot eyes. Harry slid a USB stick across the table. Victor Alvarez, I need everything you can dig up on him. Everything. Neil didn't ask questions. He just nodded, pocketing the drive. "You'll have it in 2 days." 2 days later, in the dim motel room, Neil handed Harry a thin but dense file. "He's no angel, Harry. Victor Alvarez, divorced his first wife 7 years ago. Official reason: irreconcilable differences." But Neil's source, the ex-wife herself, told a different story. She'd caught Victor with a female colleague in a hotel room after a company party. The divorce was messy and expensive. A few years later, a real estate fraud scandal inflating property values to secure larger bank loans. The case was dropped for lack of direct evidence, but the cloud of suspicion lingered, forcing him out of a major firm into a smaller, independent office. There were 2 formal complaints from clients about unprofessional conduct and inappropriate familiarity. Neil pointed to the last line. "This guy's a predator, Harry. He knows how to get what he wants and has no problem stepping on people to get it." Harry nodded, his heart a block of ice. "I know." He looked at the file. "Now I need more. I need enough to bury them both." Harry returned home, his face a mask of placid calm, even going so far as to ask Rachel about her day. He told her the tension at the base had eased up, that his leg was feeling better. Rachel let out a visible sigh of relief, her smile brightening. The moment she took Katie to ballet class, Harry began a systematic search. He didn't ransack the place. He observed, memorized, and took pictures with a newly purchased cell phone. He went through the old bills in the desk drawer: power, water, cable. He compared them to previous months. A new recurring monthly charge had appeared 6 months ago: Serenity Day Spa and Wellness. Harry remembered Rachel mentioning the place, but he was certain he'd never signed a check or approved a charge on their joint card for such an expensive membership. He checked their bank statements again. No debits to the spa from their account. So who was paying? An idea sparked. He pulled up the photo he'd taken of Victor Alvarez's power bill, which he'd accidentally seen when he went over to borrow the lawnmower last week. The email address on the bill: valvarez@quickmail.com. Harry went to the Serenity Spa website and entered that email into the forgot password field. A recovery email was sent. Victor had used his personal email to register and pay for a diamond membership for Rachel, a gift from the good neighbor. He went up to the attic where old boxes were stored. One contained memorabilia from Rachel's time studying photography in art school. Harry rummaged through it, finding old rolls of film negatives. He took them to a photo lab that specialized in processing old film. It took 2 days. When he got them back, his hand trembled as he flipped through the prints. Most were landscapes, photos of a tiny Katie. And then he found it. One photo, taken discreetly from a corner of the garden. Rachel and Victor, standing on Harry's porch, locked in a tight embrace, their lips pressed together. The sun was shining, and in the background, clearly visible, was the princess-shaped birthday cake Harry had special ordered for Katie last year, on his daughter's birthday, on his own front porch. Harry arranged to meet Willow. They met in the park while Katie was on the swings. Willow looked tense. "Are you okay, Willow?" Harry asked gently. Willow looked at him, her eyes glistening. "Harry, I don't know how to say this. I saw them, months ago. Rachel and Victor in his car. It was parked in a secluded spot near Riverside Park. They were in there for a long time. I was going to walk over, but I was scared. I didn't want to believe it. And Rachel, she convinced me they were just talking business, that Victor was helping her find a gift for you." Her voice broke. "I should have told you sooner. I'm so sorry." Harry put a hand on her shoulder. "It's not your fault, Willow. Thank you for telling me." Willow's admission, along with the photo and the spa bill, were crucial pieces. But he needed more. He needed an undeniable panoramic view of the truth. The motel room became his intelligence hub. Harry bought a small printer. Every photo, the picture of Victor and Rachel, the photos of the spa bill and Victor's utility bill, every suspicious bank statement, the printout of the spa password recovery email, even a handwritten note detailing Willow's account. Everything was printed, time-stamped, arranged chronologically, and taped to the wall. A wall of evidence. Harry stood before it, his eyes no longer filled with pain, but with the cold focus of a logistics officer preparing for a major operation. He began keeping a detailed journal, logging every event, every conversation, every encounter. Everything had to be documented, archived, and ready for the decisive moment. Harry became the lead actor in the drama of his own life. He lived in a house with the enemy, smiled at the traitor, and shook the hand of the man who had destroyed his life. "I'm heading to work, honey," Harry would say, placing a light kiss on Rachel's cheek in the morning. The kiss turned his stomach, but he let none of it show. Rachel would smile, wrapping her arms around him. "Drive safe. I'm making your favorite tonight." "I'm looking forward to it," Harry would reply, his voice warm. He'd step outside and take a deep, cleansing breath the moment the door closed behind him. The deceit was suffocating. He even maintained his good neighbor relationship with Victor. One Saturday afternoon, he brought 2 cold beers over to Victor's house. "Thanks for helping Rachel with that leaky faucet the other day," Harry said, popping one open. Victor laughed, clapping him on the back. "Hey, no problem. We're buddies, right?" They sat on the front steps looking out at the street, talking about baseball and the weather. Harry laughed in all the right places and nodded in agreement. Inside, he pictured tackling Victor to the ground and wrapping his hands around the man's throat, but he just took a sip of beer and commented on how cold it was. Every moment at home, while Rachel was in the shower or asleep, was an opportunity. He synced the data from the recorder in the air vent to his laptop. He installed a keylogger on their shared family computer. He surreptitiously photographed Rachel's phone screen when she left it unlocked on the table. He recovered all the deleted messages from the family iPad. Every new piece of evidence, a flirtatious text setting up a meeting, a search history for hourly rate hotels, an overly intimate email to Victor was added to the wall of truth in his motel room. Rachel and Victor grew bolder. One afternoon, Harry told Rachel he had a physical therapy appointment for his leg. He drove off, but only circled a few blocks before parking his car in a hidden spot down the street. Peering through the gap in his own living room curtains, he waited. Less than 15 minutes later, Victor walked over from his house next door. Rachel opened the door, a radiant smile on her face. They embraced right there in the doorway before disappearing inside. Harry sat there, his heart pounding, hands strangling the steering wheel. He remotely activated the recorder, a new device he'd bought, but couldn't hear anything clearly. The visual was enough. He snapped a series of photos with his long zoom camera. Meeting Neil later, Harry recounted the event, his voice thick with fury. Neil looked at him hard, his voice low and resonant. "Let it hurt you now, Harry, or let it destroy you forever. Your choice." Neil's words were a bucket of ice water. Harry nodded, swallowing his rage. Pain. Yes, but to survive, he had to endure. He had to keep wearing the mask. He had to gather enough ammunition. Margaret Sloane was unlike any lawyer Harry had ever met. Her office in downtown Manhattan was stark and minimalist, without a single flower or family photo. She was in her mid-40s, with a severe black bob and gray eyes as sharp as razors behind thin-rimmed glasses. She listened as Harry laid out his case, flipping through the thick binder he brought the journal, the printed evidence, the copy of Victor's background check from Neil. She showed no surprise, offered no pity, only intense focus. "The situation is clear but not simple," Sloane stated, her voice crisp and precise. "She has the advantage of being the primary caregiver while you were away, and she will attack your injury and your resulting mental state. We need to be proactive." She began issuing directives like a commanding officer. Finances. Harry was to immediately open a separate bank account and transfer half of their joint savings into it. He was to contact the Military Pension Administration immediately and change the contingent beneficiary to Katie, with Harry as guardian, ensuring Rachel couldn't touch it. All of Rachel's supplementary credit cards were to be canceled. Custody. He needed to gather all evidence of Rachel's negligence, leaving Katie with a non-parent like Victor, her late-night outings. He was to document every positive interaction he had with Katie. Margaret would hire an independent psychologist for an evaluation. Evidence. The file needed to be ironclad. Margaret required legally admissible copies of the audio recordings. New York law allows one-party consent recording, which was Harry. She handed Harry a sophisticated-looking wristwatch. "It's a recorder. Wear it at all times when you're with her or Alvarez," Mute your phone when you record. She then gave him a small USB device. An advanced keylogger. Plug it into your home computer. It will send the data directly to my server. The house. Margaret advised Harry not to move out yet, to avoid any allegations of family abandonment. But he needed to begin photographing all their shared assets, especially items he had purchased or inherited. "This is a war, Lieutenant Moore," Sloane said, her gaze unwavering. "And when you strike, you get one shot to make it count. It has to be a knockout blow. No mercy, no regrets." She stood and shook his hand. "Be patient. And don't do anything stupid." Harry walked out onto the bustling Manhattan street, the recording watch heavy on his wrist, the keylogger burning a hole in his pocket. Neon lights flashed and horns blared around him. He felt like a solitary soldier stepping into a new kind of war, where the enemies were the people he had once loved most. But this time, he had a clear plan of attack, and he would not fail. Of course. Here is the continuation of the story, translated to capture the intended tone, psychological depth, and natural storytelling flow. Margaret Sloane's office was as cold and impersonal as the first time Harry had seen it. The air was dry, smelling faintly of paper and weak coffee. Miss Sloane reviewed the new last will and testament Harry had just signed, nodding with satisfaction. "Good. Katie is the sole beneficiary. All assets, including your pension benefits, will be managed by a trust with you as the named guardian until she turns 25. Rachel won't get a cent." She pushed the papers across the desk. "Step 1, complete. Now for Step 2, solidify the evidence of her lifestyle." Harry nodded, his face a stoic mask. He had learned to hide everything behind a wall of ice. "I have an idea." The trap was set with surgical precision. Harry knew Rachel craved the life of luxury Victor had promised. He concocted a story about an investment fund for high-ranking officers that was looking for civilian partners. "They're hosting an intimate dinner at a high-end restaurant in Manhattan," he explained to Rachel, his voice casual. "This is a huge opportunity for our future, honey. I want you to come with me. Make a good impression on their wives." Rachel's eyes lit up. Manhattan, a fancy restaurant, the upper crust. "Really, Harry? That's wonderful. I'll be there." But 2 days before the dinner, Harry put on a show of disappointment. "Damn it, I've got a surprise meeting on base. Can't be moved. Can you go alone? Just go. Tell them you're Lieutenant Moore's wife. They'll treat you well. Think of it as you scouting it out for us." Rachel, though momentarily let down, immediately seized the opportunity. A free evening with Victor at an expensive restaurant on Harry's dime. Perfect. "It's no problem, honey," she cooed. "I can handle it. Don't you worry." That night, a private investigator recommended by Neil, a middle-aged man with the forgettable appearance of an accountant, sat at a discreet table in the restaurant. He didn't have to watch for long. Rachel and Victor made no attempt to hide. They ordered the most expensive wine, their laughter loud and carefree. Victor's hand rested on Rachel's thigh under the table. They kissed, a deep, hurried kiss when they thought no one was looking. The camera with the telephoto lens hidden behind a menu captured it all. At home, a low-grade tension began to seep into the air, just enough for a sensitive child like Katie to notice. "Daddy," she asked as Harry tied her shoelaces, "how come I don't see you and Mommy smiling at each other anymore?" Harry froze, his heart clenching. He looked up, forcing a smile. "We still smile, Princess. It's just, Daddy's been busy and tired lately. Everything's going to be okay." He pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent of her hair. This lie hurt more than the betrayal. It was a promise, a vow that he would fix things, no matter the cost. Rachel's audacity peaked. She bought a new dress for her upcoming birthday party, a vibrant red silk dress, form-fitting and daringly backless, the kind of thing Harry knew she would never wear with him. She used their joint credit card, the one Harry had deliberately left active. That night, the recorder in the living room captured her phone call with Victor. "I just bought a new dress. Red. You're going to love it." No, he paid for it. He thinks I bought it to make him happy for my birthday. The poor thing. Yes, I'm wearing it for you." Harry sat in the motel room listening to the playback, his hand clenched into a fist. He printed the credit card statement, highlighting the charge for the dress, and placed it next to the transcript of the call. Another piece was taped to the wall of truth. The call came late one evening. Harry was organizing files on his laptop, cross-referencing dates, bills, and audio clips. It was Neil. His voice was low and clipped. "Harry, I'm at the old bar. Get over here. There's something you need to see." No further explanation. Harry knew it was important. He threw on a jacket and drove through the night. Neil was at the bar, a half-finished beer in front of him. He said nothing, just slid a brown manila envelope across the counter. "I had a guy tailing Victor like you asked. Not for the Rachel thing, for a business deal of his that stinks to high heaven. And this is what they found." Harry opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of grainy long-lens photos. Victor, entering a cheap, hourly-rate motel on the outskirts of the city. He wasn't with Rachel. He was with another woman younger, blonde, dressed provocatively. The last photo captured the woman's license plate, and a small, clipped note from Neil was attached. "Laura Gable, a bartender near his real estate office. Married." Harry stared at the photos. He didn't feel jealousy. He didn't feel insulted on Rachel's behalf. He only felt a cold, terrifyingly calculating sensation rising in his veins. The snake had bitten its accomplice, Victor Alvarez, the man who saw himself as the center of the universe, who had shattered Harry's family, was nothing more than a cheap cheat, unfaithful even to his mistress. "The bastard," Harry murmured, not with anger but with confirmation. "Yeah," Neil said, taking a sip of beer. "He's playing them both. This changes everything, Harry. You don't just have evidence against Rachel anymore. Now you have leverage against both of them." Harry leaned his head back, staring at the smoke-stained ceiling of the bar. A bitter, ironic smile touched his lips. His plan had just become perfect. This wasn't just about exposing Rachel's affair with him. He would expose Victor's affair with the other woman, right in front of Rachel, in front of everyone. He would show her exactly what kind of man she had thrown everything away for. He returned to the motel room, which now felt like a war room. He carefully taped the new photos of Victor and his blonde lover to a separate corner of the wall of truth. The wall no longer told just the story of Rachel's betrayal. It was a damning indictment of the fraudulent nature of them both. Harry sat down and opened his laptop. He created a slideshow presentation. Slide 1. A happy family photo of him, Rachel, and Katie from 3 years ago. Slide 2. The spa bill Victor had paid for Rachel. Slide 3. The photo of them kissing during Katie's birthday party. Then came the audio clips, the text messages, the hotel bills. And then he inserted the photos of Rachel and Victor at the fancy restaurant. Immediately following those were the pictures of Victor entering the motel with the blonde. He sat back and looked at his creation, a symphony of deceit, meticulously arranged for maximum destruction. He was no longer the victim, he was the architect of their ruin. The pain was still there, a deep, throbbing ache, but now it had been forged into a weapon. Rachel's 36th birthday was approaching. She wanted something special. "A party at the country club, honey," she suggested, her voice full of expectation. "Just our closest friends, to celebrate, a new beginning for us." Harry, wearing the mask of the penitent husband, agreed instantly. "A wonderful idea, honey. You deserve it. Don't worry about the cost. I'll take care of everything." Rachel was ecstatic. She thought she had won. She thought Harry was trying to buy back her love, that he was too weak and dependent to ever leave her. On her calls with Victor, she giggled. "He's begging for forgiveness the only way a soldier knows how, Victor. With money. This party is his white flag of surrender. Soon we'll have everything." Harry heard it all, and he began drawing up the guest list. Rachel's parents, a respectable elderly couple from Long Island who had always considered Harry the perfect son-in-law. Mr. Thompson, Victor's boss, the owner of the small real estate firm who valued his employees' family man image above all else. Willow Stein, the best friend whose trust Rachel had betrayed, who would serve as a living witness to her downfall. Katie's teacher, so she could see the true face of the mother she always praised at parent-teacher conferences. And of course Neil and his wife, who would provide technical support and ensure Katie was safely removed when all hell broke loose. The chosen country club had a private ballroom with a large projection screen. Harry told the manager he wanted to play a video montage celebrating their journey of love. Neil, in his role as best friend, arrived early to check the AV system. In reality, he patched Harry's laptop into the projector, ensuring everything was ready with a single click. The night before the party, Harry stood alone in the motel room. He didn't rehearse a speech. He didn't need to. The words had been burning in his heart for months. He just looked at the wall of truth, one last time, like a soldier checking his weapon before battle. Everything was ready. Every calculation was complete. The enemy was walking into his kill zone, completely unaware. It was one of the last times Harry used the recorder in the air vent. He already had enough evidence, but a morbid curiosity, a need for one final confirmation, compelled him. He was rewarded. The voices of Rachel and Victor came through, clear and brazen. They were in his living room, drinking his liquor, while he was supposedly away on business. "Just let him be. He'll be fine," Victor said, his voice slurring slightly from the alcohol. "After this is all over, he'll find someone at a recovery center or some other sad sack support group." Rachel let out a shrill laugh, a cold, brittle sound. "You're so cruel. But you're probably right. Some psychologically damaged soldier. He'll blame himself, his injury, being away from home. It will never occur to him that the problem was me." "The problem wasn't you, baby," Victor murmured. "The problem was you deserved more, and now you have it." Harry switched off the recorder. He felt no anger anymore, just a cold, vast emptiness. They hadn't just betrayed him. They despised him. They mocked his pain. That audio clip, more than anything else, was the smoking gun. It was the final, irrefutable proof of their cruelty. He saved the audio file to the presentation folder, naming it Finale. That evening, when he went home to get ready for the party, he went into Katie's room to wish her good night. She was fast asleep. On her small pillow was a piece of paper folded in 4. Harry gently opened it. Inside was a crayon drawing of 2 figures, one large and one small, holding hands. Underneath, in Katie's childish scrawl, it read, "I hope you stop being sad, Daddy. I love you." A single hot tear, one he had suppressed for months, finally traced a path down his cheek. He clutched the paper in his hand. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about liberation. Liberation for him, and more importantly, liberation for his little girl from a house built on lies. Katie's note didn't weaken him. It forged his resolve into steel. Tonight was the performance. He stood before the mirror, adjusting his tie. He looked at the man in the reflection eyes, weary, but with a hard, determined glint. He was no longer Harry Moore, the betrayed husband. He was a soldier on the most important mission of his life, a mission to reclaim his honor, his future, and peace for his daughter. Outside, the party was waiting. The curtain was about to fall. And he was the director. The country club ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers. A jazz trio played velvety tunes in the corner, the sound of the saxophone mingling with the scent of expensive perfume and exquisite food. Everything was perfect. A meticulously painted portrait of success and happiness. At the center of that portrait was Rachel. She was truly stunning. The vibrant red silk dress clung to her figure, highlighting her fair skin and lustrous brown hair. Her smile was radiant, her eyes sparkling as she moved from one group of guests to another, arm in arm with Harry. She was the queen of the night, and she knew it. Victor stood beside her, as smug as a triumphant general. He wore an expensive suit, his smile a flash of white teeth. He shook Rachel's father's hand, clapped an old friend of Harry's on the back, playing the role of the devoted friend, the perfect neighbor. His confidence was almost tangible, an arrogant aura that enveloped both him and Rachel. And Harry was the consummate actor. He played the part of the doting husband, a little wounded but endlessly forgiving. His smile was practiced to perfection, just warm enough to fool everyone. He raised a glass to his in-laws, told a funny story about Rachel in college that made everyone laugh, but behind his calm brown eyes was a cold, hollow void. He could feel the weight of the USB drive in his pocket, like a grenade with the pin already pulled. He scanned the room. Everyone was there. Rachel's parents, beaming with pride. Mr. Thompson, Victor's boss, nodding in approval. Willow, standing in a corner, her wine glass trembling slightly, her eyes evasive. And Neil, positioned near the AV system, watching silently. Rachel squeezed Harry's arm. "See? Everyone's here. It's wonderful. Yes, Harry replied, his voice low. Everyone's here, to bear witness. Rachel missed the deeper meaning in his words. She just smiled, the smile of a person who believed they had it all. 9 o'clock. Harry glanced toward Neil. Neil caught his eye and gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. To Harry, it was as loud as a starter pistol. It was time. Harry tapped his wine glass gently, the clear chime cutting through the room. The jazz music faded to silence. All eyes turned to him. He stood, smiling at Rachel. Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate the 36th birthday of my beloved wife, Rachel. He paused, looking directly into her eyes. I thought a lot about what to say tonight. I could talk about your beauty, about how your smile lit up my life. I could talk about the memories we've made, the home we've built, our beautiful daughter. Rachel smiled, her eyes misting over with emotion. Her parents looked at their son-in-law with pure adoration. But tonight, Harry's voice suddenly changed. The warmth vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp edge. I want to talk about a different kind of gift, the most important gift the woman I married has given me, the gift of truth. A confused silence fell over the room. Rachel frowned, her smile faltering. Harry raised a small remote. Allow me to show you that truth. He pressed the button. The large screen behind him lit up. The first image was their happy family photo. A murmur of appreciation went through the crowd. But then the screen changed. A copy of a spa bill. An email from Victor to the spa. The murmurs died. The next photo. Rachel and Victor kissing on the porch during Katie's birthday party. A horrified gasp came from Rachel's mother. And then the audio began. The voices of Rachel and Victor filled the dead silence. He's just boring. Life is the same script over and over. That military pension of his is pretty significant. The color drained from Rachel's face. She stared at the screen, her eyes wide with disbelief. Victor was frozen to the spot. The show continued. Photos of them at the Manhattan restaurant. Then, the photos of Victor entering the motel with the other blonde woman. A collective "oh" swept the room. Rachel whipped her head around to look at Victor, her eyes no longer filled with horror, but with pure, betrayed fury. And finally, the last recording. He'll find someone at a recovery center or some other sad sack support group. Rachel's shrill laugh echoed through the ballroom, grotesque and out of place. Crash! The wine glass fell from Rachel's hand and shattered on the floor, just as her world had. The whispers had now erupted into outraged murmurs. Victor, his face crimson with shame and rage, muttered a curse, knocked over a chair, and stormed out of the room. A total silence descended. Every single person stared at Rachel, who stood frozen amidst the shards of her glass and her life. Rachel stammered, trying to say something, but no words would come. She looked at Harry, her eyes pleading, panicked. Harry, it's not... Harry didn't respond. He simply walked forward, a thick sheaf of papers in his hand that he had pulled from his jacket pocket. He placed it on the table in front of her. On the top page, in large, bold letters, Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. At that exact moment, the ballroom doors opened. Margaret Sloane entered. She wore a black power suit, her expression cold and emotionless, like an angel of death. She walked directly to Rachel's table. Miss Rachel Moore. Sloane's voice was dry, echoing in the silence. You've been served. Rachel collapsed into her chair, burying her face in her hands. A chain reaction ignited. Mr. T. Thompson, Victor's boss, his face pale with fury, approached Rachel's father. I apologize for what my employee has done. Consider his employment terminated, effective immediately. He turned and left without a second glance at Rachel. Willow, who had been frozen since the beginning, walked forward. Tears streamed down her face, not of pity, but of anger. How could you, Rachel? How could you? She whispered. And then, unable to stop herself, she slapped Rachel hard across the face. The sound was sharp and final. In the midst of the chaos, Neil's wife, a gentle woman who had been briefed on everything, quietly went to Katie, who had been kept in a separate waiting room. Come on, sweetie, let's go home, she said, shielding Katie's eyes and ears from the horrific scene, and led her out a side exit. Rachel looked up, looked around. Her parents were staring at her with utter disappointment. The friends who had been laughing with her moments ago were turning away, whispering amongst themselves. She was completely alone. The bomb had detonated, and she was at ground zero. Harry watched the scene for a moment longer, his face a blank canvas. His mission was complete. He felt no satisfaction, just a vast emptiness. He had burned down a forest to kill 2 snakes. He turned to the remaining guests, his voice calm and clear. "I apologize for ruining your evening, and thank you for coming." No further explanation. He turned his back and walked away, leaving behind the wreckage of Rachel and the shards of his marriage. He walked through the grand lobby of the country club, where the staff still bowed, oblivious to the war that had just ended inside. He pushed open the heavy doors and stepped out into the cold December night. Snow had begun to fall, soft, white flakes swirling in the lamplight. It was so quiet, a silence that was deafening after the storm inside. Neil was waiting for him by his car, Harry's keys in his hand. "Katie's safe. My wife's taking her to our place." Harry nodded. "Thank you, Neil, for everything." Neil clapped him on the shoulder, a firm, understanding gesture. He said nothing more, just handed Harry the keys and drove away. Harry stood alone in the falling snow. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a pack of cigarettes, something he hadn't touched in 10 years. He lit one. The small flame flared in the night, illuminating his tired face. He took a long, deep drag, the warm smoke filling his cold lungs. He exhaled a plume of white smoke that dissolved into the falling snow. He looked back at the brightly lit country club, where his wife was drowning in her own ashes. Victor was gone. His life as he knew it was over. He didn't feel happy. He didn't feel sad. He just felt free. A cold, bitter freedom, but real nonetheless. He walked into the night toward his car, leaving it all behind. The war was over. He had won. The battle in the ballroom was over, but the legal war had just begun. Rachel, cornered and advised by a scorched-earth lawyer, decided to fight back. She countersued, claiming emotional abuse, alleging that Harry had illegally bugged her and used the recordings to entrap her. She demanded half the assets, full custody, and substantial alimony. They met in court. Rachel entered with the demeanor of a victim, dressed plainly, her eyes puffy. But she had underestimated Margaret Sloane. In the cold courtroom, Margaret dismantled Rachel's arguments systemically and ruthlessly. "Miss Moore, you claim emotional abuse?" Margaret asked, her voice dry. "Was having an affair with your neighbor, in your marital home, while your husband was away serving his country, an act of concern for his mental well-being," Rachel's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. "You speak of illegal recordings?" Margaret continued, holding up a copy of New York state law. "The law permits recording a conversation with one-party consent. Lieutenant Moore, who installed the device in his own home, was the consenting party. The fact that you and Mr. Alvarez chose his private residence to plot the seizure of his assets is not his fault. The evidence was presented, the audio clips, the photos, Willow's testimony, the bank statements, the testimony of Victor's former boss. The wall of evidence from Harry's motel room was now legally reconstructed in the courtroom. When the clip of Rachel and Victor mocking that Harry would find someone at a recovery center was played, the courtroom was silent. Even the judge couldn't hide his disgust. The final judgment was more devastating than the birthday party. Harry was granted sole physical and legal custody of Katie. The house was awarded to him, as it was purchased largely with his family inheritance. His military pension was left untouched. All of Rachel's claims were dismissed. She walked away with nothing but her old car and a mountain of credit card debt. As the session ended, Margaret Sloane looked at Rachel, who sat stunned in her chair. "You bet the house," she said, just loud enough for Rachel to hear. "And you lost." Harry led Katie out of the courthouse by the hand, never once looking back. Neil was waiting for them outside. "You burned the bridge," Neil said, clapping Harry's shoulder, "and walked away from the ashes." Harry looked at his daughter, squeezing her hand a little tighter. "No, Neil, I just put out the fire." 6 months later, the world had shifted. Harry heard through a friend that Rachel was working retail in a New Jersey mall, living in a small, rented apartment. Her radiant beauty had faded, replaced by a weary bitterness. She had tried to contact her parents, but they refused to speak to her. Victor Alvarez fared worse. The scandal from the party cost him his job and his reputation. Creditors closed in. In a desperate move, he attempted a blatant insurance fraud scheme and was arrested a few months later. Neil sent Harry a small newspaper clipping. Victor had been sentenced to 2 years in prison. One evening, as Harry was making dinner, Katie looked up and asked, "Daddy, is Mommy okay?" The innocent question was a pang in his heart. He sat down beside her and looked her in the eye. He had promised he would never lie to her again. "Mommy is trying to find her way, Princess. Sometimes grown-ups make big mistakes, and it takes time to fix them. But she still loves you, in her own way." It was the kindest thing he could say. Willow had called a few times, attempting to mend the friendship. "I'm sorry, Harry. I should have done more." "You did what you could, Willow," Harry replied, polite but distant. "I wish you well." He hung up. Some bridges, once burned, didn't need to be rebuilt. He had learned to be selective about who he allowed into his and his daughter's life. The revenge was complete, but the wound remained. Harry knew that destroying Rachel and Victor's lives didn't automatically heal his own. He took an extended leave of absence. He and Katie embarked on a journey. They didn't go to fancy resorts. They drove his old Jeep across the country. They camped under the stars in Utah, marveled at the mountains in Montana, and fished in a cold lake in Minnesota. They hiked, they told stories around campfires, and most importantly, they talked to each other. Harry started a new journal, not to collect evidence, but to unburden his soul. He wrote about the betrayal, the pain, the rage, and slowly about forgiveness. Not forgiveness for Rachel, but for himself for being so blind. He reconnected with old army buddies, men who understood the loneliness and pressure of a soldier's life. He joined a local nonprofit, spending weekends teaching basic skills to kids from single-parent homes. He saw a part of himself in those children, and in helping them, he was helping himself. He rediscovered music, which he'd abandoned after marrying Rachel because she found it noisy. He bought a used guitar, and in the evenings, after Katie was asleep, he'd sit on the porch and pluck out sad blues melodies. For the first time in years, he found himself smiling a real, unforced, guilt-free smile. The pain didn't disappear, but it became a part of him, a scar that reminded him of what he'd endured and the strength he'd found to overcome it. A year after that fateful night, Harry, now honorably discharged, decided to settle in a quiet little town in Colorado where he and Katie felt at home. He bought a small house with a white picket fence and a big yard. He was invited to a fundraiser for veterans. He didn't really want to go, but a friend insisted, and there he met her. Elaine, 36, was a therapist specializing in trauma for veterans and their families. She had a warm smile and intelligent eyes that seemed to see past the walls he had built around himself. They didn't flirt. They just talked. He told her about his travels, about his volunteer work. She told him about her job, its challenges and rewards. They talked about music, books, and the sense of peace that comes from looking at a mountain range. There were no games, no pretenses, no hollow promises. Just a genuine connection between two souls who had seen their share of storms. The story ends on a brilliant summer afternoon. Harry is sitting on his front porch, a cup of coffee in hand, watching Katie, now 9, playing fetch with the rescue dog they'd adopted in their green, sprawling yard. Her laugh is pure and unburdened. Harry's phone buzzes. It's a text from Elaine. "Walk tonight?" Harry smiles, a soft, contented smile. He texts back, "I'd love that." He sets the phone down, leans back in his chair, closes his eyes, and takes a deep breath of the clean afternoon air. The sun is beginning to set, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange. Not all endings are sad. Some are just long overdue. And for Harry Moore, this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning.